Hey guys, AJ here, back with another one. So I told everyone I'd have a follow up, part two to my review of the Brian Kemp Stacey Abrams debate. So where we left off, I think that I said I'd do this in like 10 minute of the debate increments. So I'll do my best. This is going to be part two, but I want to look at this article real fast. So the video might be a little bit longer than I want it to be, but this is important to what I mean about kind of the narrative. In some of my previous videos, I was talking about how Stacey Abrams is trying to get the black male vote, but to me, it seems like she's setting it up to where she can blame black men for her loss, right? So she's kind of setting out this narrative to steer the conversation a certain way if and when she loses. And this article kind of supports that about the narrative. This article is called Georgia Governor Brian Kemp Plays the Quote Unquote Angry Black Woman Card on Stacey Abrams. In Monday's debate, Kemp lied about his record on guns and the economy and condescended to his Democratic opponent. This is written by Joan Walsh, and this is in The Nation. So it reads, the contrast between Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker and the state's Democratic gubernatorial nominee Stacey Abrams could not be more stark. I'm not talking about intelligence or integrity, though there's that, but the expectations that political pundits and the media generally set for the two candidates in advance of their first debate. The bar is very low for Walker, GOP consultant Brendan Buck, a Paul Ryan alum, admitted on MSNBC, since the former football player has himself said, I'm not a smart guy. And because he didn't merely babble, although he did babble a lot, he got unusual acclaim for helping himself after Friday night's debate with Senator Ralph Warnock. A clear improvement in the way he talked about policy, the New York Times' Maya King told NBC Chris Hayes on Monday night. For Abrams, the bar could not have been higher. Having lost to Brian Kemp by 55,000 votes in 2018, she quote-unquote acknowledged that Kemp won the race, but refused to officially concede, citing the unfair voting laws enforced by Kemp as Secretary of State that she disenfranchised tens of thousands of voters, many of them black. For that act of defiance, she's been punished by comparisons to election denier Donald Trump, although instead of inciting a violent insurrection, she turned to organizing harder than ever, and is widely credited with helping Joe Biden win the state, and John Ossoff and Ralph Warnock flip the Senate for Democrats. Now, let's get to where this goes. It talks about some of the stuff she said, and some of the meetings before and then during the debate. And indeed, in Monday night's debate in Atlanta, the very first question she faced was slightly hostile. The question was, though Georgia voters support her stance on abortion, guns, and other issues, she's trailing Kemp narrowly. Why? Abrams said, the reason people are on my side is because I'm on the right side of history and on the right side of issues. But we know that polls are a snapshot. The question is also, who are they taking a picture of? She has long made the case that her coalition of young voters, voters of color, and women is not adequately being counted by pollsters. Here we go. But it was Kemp who turned things ugly. When he got a chance to pose a question to Abrams, he cited his support among Georgia's sheriffs and asked her if any sheriffs supported her. It was clearly designed to give him a chance to describe her as a soft on crime, which he then did. When Abrams replied with a nuanced answer about the need to balance quote-unquote safety and justice, Kemp accused her of having no law enforcement backing, which provoked this from Adams. I have the support of sheriffs, advocates, victims, those that want to be treated fairly in our system. I have to have conversations with the entirety of Georgia. I don't have the luxury of being part of the good old boys club where we don't have to focus on the needs of people. That's when Kemp played the angry black woman card with a heaping portion of condescension. I know Miss Abrams is upset and mad, the governor cooed again, alleging that she was trying to hide her radical criminal justice agenda. He went back and forth between calling her Miss Abrams and Ms. Abrams, which seemed designed to remind voters that she's unmarried. So, I'm going to leave that there. There's always this here it is, this far into the election, and they're trying to say, oh, yeah, they're trying to paint her out to be this angry black woman. And my point is who cares? How did the debate go? What were the points? But why do you have to add this in there? They're both two candidates that are trying to basically sell themselves to the people. They're trying to let the voters know what they're going to do for them. And this person, whoever this writer is saying, oh, they're painting Stacey Abrams as an angry black woman, blah, 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 instead of actually taking this space in this magazine or this publication to actually give an analysis of what's going on. They're trying to paint the minds of people already by saying that he's playing dirty and underhanded and all this other stuff. And they're trying to prey on people's emotions and prey on people's stupidity and think that people are going to fall for this. Don't fall for it, people. And even if this was true, politics is politics, all right? You know, they say all's fair in love and war. Politics is the jungle, you know? That's the way it is. And don't complain about it. Run a good campaign, make good points, and hope things work out. So let's get into the debate. I tried to pick it up right where I left it off. Let's get into it.
Actually, to correct Mr. Hazel, I co-sponsored legislation to expand ballot access because I agree with you that third parties should have better access to the right to vote in the state of Georgia. I co-sponsored it with one of our independents in the state legislature. But let's be clear about ballot access and voter access. Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State, and he has assiduously denied access to the right to vote. We know that the right to vote is the only way that we can make the changes we need in the state, the only way we can make the changes we need in this country.
Skip ahead just a
24 hours a day. I would like to just the record reflect, as my time as Secretary of State, I'm the person that created the online voter registration system in this state, where any Georgian can vote, register to vote 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for someone to say that we have been suppressive in our state when we've seen turnout increase over the years, including with minorities like African Americans, Latinos, and others, is simply not true.
That is true. I mean, like I said, I'm not super pro Brian Kemp, but that is true. The numbers are up all across the board. And of course, the narrative is going to be, well, why wasn't there more? And I still say that most of the people that don't vote, of any color or any creed or whatever, don't give a damn about politics. You know, poll the people in your family or your friend's circle or at your job and ask them, ask how many of them know who's running for any of the local elections. And I guarantee most of them won't know.
And again, Ms. Abrams is going to lie about my record because she doesn't want to talk about her own.
All right, we're going to move on here.
And that's the case.
We're going to move on here, Mr. Hazel. Jennifer, your question for Brian Kemp.
Governor Kemp, several hospitals and medical centers across the state have announced or gone through with plans to close their doors, leaving a gap in care and a reduction in services at a time when our healthcare workers are already suffering from burnout, from increased demand and workloads. Many are now facing care that will be delayed or unavailable, while our state's capital will soon have only one level 1 trauma center. What will you do to ensure Georgians have access to critical healthcare services and hospitals?
Well, I would just remind voters at home, there's also hospitals being built across this state and new options for people for health care. Look, the AMC situation was something that was thrown on a lot of political leaders, including me. But instead of complaining about it and doing the blame game, I went and worked with Fulton County, with DeKalb County, with Democrats to come up with a solution that put state resources into Grady to help make sure people have the access and the care that they need in our state. And I'm committed to continuing to do that in the future.
All right. Shane,
So, like I said, I don't live in Georgia, so I can't really comment on this particular answer. And it sounds, so I haven't done the research there to actually see if the money that he said went to the correct areas. But because there was no challenge on anyone's part, I'm assuming that what he said is true.
sorry. Yeah, Chuck, you get the final question to Shane Hazel.
Thank you. Mr. Hazel, you ran for Congress in 2018. That was just 4 years ago. You ran as a Republican. You got less than 30% of the vote in the Republican primary. What happened between then and now that made you a libertarian?
Oh, I actually came back to my roots as a libertarian. We believe in freedom. We saw what the Republican Party was. We saw what the Democratic Party was. They are force and coercion. No matter what they talk about, it's force and coercion. Whether it's certificate of need for hospitals, whether it is taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. It is always force and coercion at the point of a gun from the Democrats and Republicans. To look at life through consent, the eyes that, hey, we can all have transactions. We do it every day in the private sector. 99.9% of us go throughout our day without raping people, without murdering people, without pointing guns at people to take their property. That is not what the government does under Republicans and Democrats, period. That's why I became a libertarian. This is why we're going to send this thing into a runoff. And if people were really looking for something to change, you'd vote libertarian. You'd send a message to both of these parties, because one of these people will most likely be the executive in a rigged system, that you want to be more free.
Thank you.
Now, like I said in the previous video, libertarians have a lot of really good points that I like that sound good in theory, but I don't know how the practice would work. I am a true free market capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I think that capitalism's the greatest thing that there is. If you can think of something better, invent it and see if it works. But I also think there's organizations or there's certain things that need to be regulated, like some medical products, etc., because you have these snake oil salesmen that can be like the snake oil dudes in the Wild West, where they have elixirs and stuff that don't work. And now with social media and the internet and stuff, you can really have people do some real damage if there's not some basic level of regulation for products like pharmaceuticals, etc. I know that system's not too perfect, but it helps. So I don't want to get into that, but yeah, like I said, this guy makes this debate actually fun to watch, because he knows he's not going to win, but he's just there to make his points and then get his voice heard and kind of stir some shit up too. So let's get back into it.
That concludes the first round of the debate. The candidates will now ask a question to each of their opponents. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate who asks the questions will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. By random selection, Brian Kemp, you may ask the first question to Stacey Abrams.
I wonder if they flipped a coin like in an NFL game or something. Can you imagine they have the big coin with like Stacey Abrams' face and like Brian Kemp's face, and I don't know, and the other dude and another coin, and they all flip and call heads or something? That'd be hilarious.
Well, thank you very much. As many people know, I have over 100 sheriffs endorsing my campaign, several of which are Democrats. And my question for Ms. Abrams tonight is, how many sheriffs statewide have publicly endorsed your campaign?
Which is a very good question. And I looked on social media, and some people had a problem with this question and were saying, oh, what does this matter? And well, she was, during the whole defund the police BS, she was talking about how she agreed and all of that. And once again, I am not a super pro police person, but I believe that police is necessary. Policing is necessary. We can't just not have a police force, okay? Or everything would just go crazy. There's enough bad people out there that can do enough damage to where our society would suffer. While the average person gets up, goes to work, takes care of their kids, there's that small percentage of people that are somewhat kept in check by the police. So now, I would say that people on the defund the police are so crazy far the other way that they make me seem like I'm a pro-police person. But no, I just say that it's necessary, and that completely defunding the police is an idiotic idea. So I think that that's a valid question that Brian Kemp is immediately going for the jugular here and saying, look, I have the support of police on my side. I went and talked to these individual people who like what I'm doing. So what are you doing? And let's see how this goes.
Mr. Kemp, what you are attempting to do is continue the lie that you've told so many times. I think you believe it's the truth. I support law enforcement and did so for 11 years, worked closely with the Sheriff's Association. I'm probably the only person standing here who's ever actually written a SOP for a police department when I was working for the city of Atlanta. But I have two brothers, one who has committed crimes, and I want his victims to be able to call the police and get the help they need, and I've always supported that right. But I have another brother who has faced being pulled over for driving while black when he was coming back from his job as a social worker.
Well, here's the thing about that, because it didn't matter what Stacey Abrams would have said during the Black Lives Matter, the BLM defund the police thing, because even though some argue, oh, well, she didn't directly say defund the police, but the fact that she got into the conversation in the first place looks bad in this particular point of view. And also with this woke crowd, if she wouldn't have said anything, then they would have eviscerated her. So this is why you don't try to pander to these woke defund the police BLM people anyways. So sucks to be you, Stacey Abrams.
Unlike you, I don't have the luxury of relying on slogans to describe my position on public safety. I believe that we need safety and justice because I love both of my brothers.
Slogans are always good. It works for, Frosted Flakes? They're great. Everyone has to have a slogan. That's not a bad thing.
And like most Georgians, I lead a complicated life where we need access to help, but we also need to know that we are safe from racial violence. While you may not have had that experience, too many people I know have, and that is why I will always stand up for making certain that safety and justice are the conversations we're having in Georgia and the delivery we have as the next governor of Georgia.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Mr. Kemp.
Well, I would just tell people that, look, I support safety and justice, but Ms. Abrams refused to answer the question.
Exactly. She didn't answer the question. She didn't say, and she probably knew he was going to ask this question. So maybe she should have gone to some county out there and said, oh, yeah, I have random Sheriff Billy Bob or something. At least answered the question directly. And that's the thing that a lot of disingenuous people do, is they throw this word salad out there. It's like they're trying to hypnotize you with goofy words so that you kind of move past the fact that they didn't answer the question. So don't let it work on you guys.
So I'll let you know that the answer is 0. No sheriffs are endorsing her statewide because of her stances on wanting to defund the police, eliminate cash bail, and serving on the boards of organizations like the Margaret Casey Foundation that supports and gives grants to organizations that are promoting the defund the police movement.
Kaboom. There you go. And I'm going to make a video about that getting rid of cash bail business. That's crazy too.
If I may respond, because he actually lied there.
Yes,
I do
30 seconds.
have the support of sheriffs, but unlike Mr.
Which ones? Why didn't you bring any names?
Kemp, I do not make it my plan to list every person who supports me. I have the support of sheriffs. I have the support of advocates. I have the support of victims. I have the support of those who want to be treated fairly in our system. I have to have conversations with the entirety of Georgia. I don't have the luxury of being a part of a good old boys club where we don't focus on the needs.
Well, you can be part of a one old boys club and bring one name. Come on.
Needs of our people. And that is why my mission has been to put out very concrete plans explaining how I will serve justice, how I will serve safety, and how I will serve the citizens of the state of Georgia.
30 seconds, Brian Kemp.
Well, look, I would just tell people, I know Miss Abrams is upset and mad because these are things that she said. This is not me making this up.
So this is where the article was referring to right there, and he did say that to get a rise out of her, and you can see her face that it did work. So if someone's trying to play you and you let yourself get played, come on, man. This is politics, you got to be better than that.
Things that she said in interviews that she's done, and she's sitting on organizations that you can go look at the facts yourself. And that's why the men and women in law enforcement want a governor that is going to stand with them, who has been with them, not only to have their back, but also stand shoulder to shoulder on things like civil unrest and going after street gangs and human traffickers.
Thank you very much. Stacey Abrams, you get the next question for Shane Hazel.
Mr. Hazel, Republicans and Democrats have raised the alarm over the rise in the Chinese Communist Party-backed companies purchasing American farmland. To date, they've purchased more than 1 million acres of farmland in the state of Georgia. Would you agree with Mike Pompeo that allowing those purchases in the state of Georgia is a sign of madness? And would you be concerned about the national security implications of the Chinese Communist Party purchasing this land with the support of the state of Georgia?
I see the setup for this question. I understand why it was projected at me.
Now, I thought about this question at first, and before this guy answers, Shane Hazel answers, I see where he's coming from as a libertarian, where he's saying that if a person in the United States wants to sell their property to someone, it's not the government's job to decide if they can sell it or not. So let's say that I have a 600-acre ranch in Texas, and someone wants to buy it, whether it's China or wherever, as long as it's not like an active enemy of the United States or whatever, then I should be able to, as a private citizen, sell my property to anyone I want to. And to have the government come and tell me no, that I can't sell it, that's kind of crazy, you know? Now, in this case, they're saying that the person who's buying it is China. So that's kind of a sticky situation, is a government of China. So I am from Washington State, and we did have an issue with rich Chinese people. They would buy a lot of homes in Seattle and in parts of Washington State, and then they wouldn't live there because that would tie their money up, so the Chinese government couldn't manipulate the currency and affect their money. But what happened was that there was no one living in these homes, so there's no one paying property taxes. I mean, the local economy wasn't growing. So Washington State and then King County in Seattle had to actually pass a law where these houses had to be occupied so that they would actually add to the local economy, and there wasn't an actual bunch of empty homes just sitting there. So there are governments and there's state governments around the United States that are dealing with issues like this. But yeah, let's see what he says.
As libertarians, we believe that you own your property and that the state can't take it away from you and can't sell it or can't determine who you sell it to. The CCP, obviously, which is going through its own internal unrest right now, I believe is probably purchasing this with things like central bank digital dollars and yuan, which are also coming down to a critical nature where people are in uprising in China. What we need to look at is how these purchases are being made. Are we accepting fiat, CCP yuan in Georgia as a actual currency? It's about as good as the U.S. currency, the fiat currency that we're about to have hoisted on us in terms of a CBDC. I'm not going to tell you or anybody else as governor how or who to sell your property to. And I imagine that in the end, the free market will work itself out.
Thank you. Stacey Abrams, 30 seconds.
Now, the state of Georgia is watching our farmland be purchased by the Chinese Communist Party. And while that is not normally a conversation that we have, it is something that we should be concerned about. Agriculture is our #1 industry, and Georgia has 13 military installations. The fact that the state of Georgia is working with the Chinese Communist Party, using one of their technologies that both Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
A little bit of Wi-Fi trouble here, but I guess we'll just stop it here, and then I'll pick up tomorrow. It's a little late, so but yeah, so I agree with Mr. Hazel here that
Biden have warned is very much a national security threat, should be of great concern to every Georgian. This is not about being concerned simply about who's owning the land, but it's about how much access to our information they have because of the state.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, you may ask your question of Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The military-industrial complex is a big problem. It is. And the fact that we have people trying to come here to, I don't know, get a backdoor into our military, I think one of the things we should be talking about as Georgians and as executives is the Defend the Guard Act, where our military has been used very, I don't know, haphazardly around the world to go and take resources from the Middle East or now in
Mr.
Ukraine.
Hazel, your question.
Yeah, this is my question to who?
To Stacey Abrams.
We've already switched gears.
Yeah, he gets a little passionate.
Yes.
My question to you, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I have hearing problems, guys. My question to you is, I mentioned CBDCs. As the executive of Georgia, when we come into a CBDC from the Federal Reserve, will you, as the executive, accept this CCCP-style currency?
I believe that the conversation about currency is a complicated one. And part of the challenge we have is how this currency is transmitted, the very real security threats with digital currency, the hacking and mining of that digital currency should concern all Georgians. As the governor of Georgia, I will work very closely with the Federal Reserve, but also with the innovators and the entrepreneurs who do see an opportunity. But before we take a step forward that could put us at risk, our responsibility is to understand the complexity of what is happening with these transactions. And as exciting as it is, we also know it's deeply problematic when we do not have the adequate safeguards in place. That's one of the reasons I've raised concerns about WeChat and about the purchase of farmland. But what we know overall is that we need a governor who's conversant in these issues, who understands that, for example, in the state of Georgia, we have access to $3.5 billion in American currency that could be delivered tomorrow to save our hospitals and to save our lives. But our current governor has refused to accept those dollars. My intention is to do what's best for the state of Georgia every single day.
So we're going to end this here now that my Wi-Fi, decided to get off its butt and work. But yeah, I do agree with Shane Hazel that ultimately the free market should work itself out. But while it's working itself out, imagine you have a trampoline and someone bounces on it and it's shaking itself. It's kind of like bouncing back to stop, right? In a true free market, there's always going to be things that are bouncing off. There's always going to be, or like a scale slides one way, right? And then as it'll even itself out, but things have to fall off the scale. And I don't know if people really are ready for a market where people are the ones that are falling off that scale. Not that I'm for public assistance, but a true free market really does mean that there's going to be a lot of rough spots in the times that the market is correcting itself. But I digress. So we're going to stop here. I think we'll probably do about 2 or 3 more rounds of this to get through this whole thing. So thanks for everyone who's watching this, and thanks to all my subscribers, and like, subscribe, and yeah, I am out of here, and stay safe.